Hey everybody, James from Untapped here, and today we're doing an INFJ cognitive function breakdown. We're going to look in depth at all of the functions of an INFJ. So let's get into it. So let's take a look at INFJs and their cognitive functions. INFJs, they have all 8 functions, just like all the other types, but the specific order and expression delineates their priorities and personality type. Their top functions, their first ones, have more energy and optimism than the bottom ones. So as you get lower, as you go down the functions, it's a little bit overwhelming, but through all 8, it gets a little bit more negative as you go down. And INFJs, like I said, they have all the same functions as other people do. They have NI, FE, TI, SE, NE, FI, TE, SI. So we'll kind of go into what that means for an INFJ. INFJs, they lead with Introverted Intuition Hero. So it's the very first one. They're an intuitive type and they're an introverted type, so they have NI first. They lead with their internal intuition, their gut feelings, their plans, kind of what they want to do. They have that internal awareness of, you know who they want to be, their character, where they're going, what they want out of life, and who they want to be. And this helps them make internal decisions, internal choices, formulate strategies. Oh, if I do this, I can do this. I can go here and I can do that. Their long-term strategies, plans, and goals kind of funnel through this function, which is very energetic, and it defines their character, defines who they are, their level of integrity, and their intent. So what they want to do, what they were planning, how they affect people, what was their intention, and it defines who they want to be in the long term. And the NI hero kind of wants to save the world with this function. So when it's someone's first function, they want to use this function to do everything. They want to tackle this challenge, this one. You're just always using this one first. It's super energetic, it's very optimistic, and it really wants to save the world. So when you think of an INFJ's intuition internally, it's their most used function, and they're very optimistic about it. And kind of going back to that, they have that optimism about what's gonna happen as well. So being optimistic that they can do things, and never giving up and being tenacious is another element. And that's what they kind of want to save the world with, that mentality. And then we have FE parent, which is extraverted feeling. It's their second function, so they are feeling types, but it's an extroverted feeling, so that kind of has some implications as well. INFJs, they moderate with their ethics and empathy, so they're kind of moderate about it. They're not necessarily trying to save the entire world with this perspective, but they're kind of using this as kind of a compass as well. Helps them protect other people's feelings, control behavior, so they're not just going out, if you have no feeling moderation and then you're just like, I'm going to do this and this and just doing plans, you're kind of, not having any moderation about what's going on. So it defines their connection to people, their values, and their heart, and, who they care about, and understanding, who they empathize with and whose, feelings they connect with the most. And it kind of wants to protect the world with this function. So it's like a parent, right? It's more responsible. It doesn't necessarily want to take over the world, doesn't want to save the world. It doesn't want to do anything too aggressive. It just wants to kind of protect the world, protect the children. That's kind of the parent's goal, and keep everything intact. Then we have introverted thinking child, which is an INFJ's third function. Still very optimistic, still something that they're energetic about and use a lot. They kind of supplement their desires and their other people's feelings with their ideas, their thoughts, their introspection, their logic, trying to understand, think about things, analyze things, see, is this true? If this is true, then this is true. If this is true, this has to be true, and try and understand their own world. And it guides their choices by analyzing what is smart or true. So making decisions based on, true information, or making decisions about what is smart. Okay, I want to do this because this is smart. I think I want this. I think I want this. And trying to understand that loop. So this kind of defines their sincerity. It defines the advice they give other people and their general mind. So INFJs want to be honest. They're trying to think things through and understand what is true, and then speak that truth to other people and give advice about what is true. Maybe it's criticism, maybe it's helpful advice, but trying to, say what is true to help other people, say what is true to make people have a better life and feel better about themselves comes from this function. Kind of wants to speak to the world with this function. INFJs want to speak up a little bit with this, share this with the world, and have a bit of that optimism like they do with their first function. Then we go down to the fourth function, so getting a little bit lower in the mind. Extraverted Sensing, Aspirational. So INFJs, they deliver, the plans, the things they think are smart to do. I want to do this. I think I want this. They deliver with concrete action. So that action taking that comes from the fantasy, from the plans, from what they want. and actually delivering that into the world that comes through this function. And this function helps them implement their choices, see how is this going to affect people. I want to do this. What's the effect this is going to have? Is this going to give people a bad experience and push people away, or is it going to give them a good experience and draw them closer? And understanding, not only what they're doing, but also how other people are experiencing it and other people are seeing it, and trying to mediate their actions and eventually help all of their decisions with this idea. It defines their message, their legacy, the advice they give to others. So not only is their advice coming through what they think, but actually telling it to someone else and giving them that experience. That's also, part of where this advice comes from. And it kind of defines the legacy they have, what they leave onto the world, and what people actually remember and know about them. So yeah, this function, it wants to show the world with this function. It's all about showing their internal world. They have ideas, they have thoughts, they introspect, they want things. And the way they communicate that and show all of that to the world, it comes through this function. So being aspirational, it's not as optimistic as the top 3 functions. It's a bit more apprehensive, it's a bit more cautious. But it does aspire, it does want to. So an INFJ wants to do things, has plans, has aspirations, and they want to finish them, they want to do them, they want to execute them, they want to show them to people. And this function, it helps them achieve their goals. So it's kind of a helper to the hero, it's a helper to the apex of the ego for INFJ. So still a very important function, kind of a catalyst to an INFJ's happiness. And then we have Extraverted Intuition Nemesis, which is now opposing the hero. So the first 4 functions are kind of opposed by the shadow function. So the inverse, the extroverted version, the introverted, and vice versa. So basically, it's not their introverted intuition, which they're very heroic and kind of enjoy using, but the extroverted intuition, so the other side of the coin. And INFJs try to balance, what they want, who they are, with their awareness of what other people want. So not just thinking only about what they want and their plans, but kind of understanding, other people will want this, other people will do this, this is going to happen. The things outside of their control. They're very optimistic about what they can do, what they can control themselves, but with what other people are going to do and trying to control other people, they're much more worried. And it kind of helps them refine their choices by planning for what can go wrong. So it can anticipate negative consequences, anticipate negative behavior from others, and plan around that. And it kind of helps refine their plans. But it also defines their paranoia, their worries, and some trust issues with their introverted sensing demon. Kind of not trusting people because they're always seeing these negative possibilities, these negative scenarios replaying in their mind. And so it makes it harder for them to trust people when they're always anticipating things are going to go wrong and people are going to betray them. And this function in general wants to protect themselves from, the world with this function. It's very protective in theory, while the Nemesis, it's a space of worry because it's telling your hero function it could be wrong. But technically, if it works together as kind of an advisor, it can help the hero function be right. So if you use this function and develop it, it can be very helpful. Then we have Introverted Feeling Critic, which is their 6th function. It's definitely more pessimistic, it's more negative. INFJs criticize themselves with this function, their own worth, their morality, their esteem, just their general goodness, their pride. So INFJs often feel, very ashamed, very hard on themselves, have low self-esteem because this function is overly critical. But this function also helps them help other people without feeling superior. So in theory, the way this works is extroverted feeling is pretty high. They have a lot of empathy and really connect to other people's feelings. And some of that happens because their own feelings are put down a little bit and they often feel bad about themselves, so that can help them raise other people up. But it does define their low self-esteem, low self-worth, and self-destructive nature can definitely come out if they value themselves very poorly to be very self-destructive. And, this function kind of works in a way that it kind of wants to judge themselves from the world with this function. So that introverted critic function, it's like, let me just put all the judgment of the entire world onto myself and judge myself extremely negatively. So just it's really judgmental, and it's very internally judgmental as well. Then we have Extraverted Thinking Trickster, so even lower down. So we're kind of getting into the negative functions, a little more worrying. But this function kind of goes so low that it starts to ignore it entirely, and INFJs can often ignore their reputation, their popularity, their fame, their status, the glory. They ignore these things, and it kind of helps them focus on making a positive impact for other people. It helps them speak the truth with their introverted thinking because they don't care as much about what people are going to think about them, so they can just be honest without worrying about this. So this function's lack of existence actually helps the ego function express itself more openly. But it can define their closed-mindedness or potential ignorance or gullibility. INFJs don't always want to think about what other people are thinking and have new information come in. They kind of just know what they think and are happy with that. While INFJs can be curious and learning and be in that perspective, sometimes they can be closed-minded if they're just kind of lazy about it and not necessarily ambitious with learning new things. So it can create potential ignorance. And they kind of want to hide themselves from the world with this function. So INFJs don't necessarily want to use this function all the time, have this function be in the limelight. They kind of want to hide this function. Then we have Introverted Sensing Demon. So in INFJ's final function, they kind of dislike their obligations, restrictions, their body. They want to be able to do what they want, go their own direction, define their own character. So when there's limitations like health, life and death, aches and pains, people telling them what to do, financial limitations, it can be very upsetting for them. But this perspective helps them focus on independent good intentions. So being able to, keep going in their own direction and not letting things hold them back and their ability to achieve what they want. This kind of mediates that by being very low down. They're going to ignore bad experiences to get what they want. So it kind of helps their hero out. But I can also define things like bad habits, door slamming, and low attention span. So INFJs can struggle with picking up bad habits very quickly because they're not always thinking about what's healthy, what should I do. They're just kind of going, they're blazing a trail and they're kind of going, trying to progress everything. And sometimes they can, pick up some bad habits. They can also door slam other people if they cut people out of their life. Sometimes a really good thing because they have extroverted feeling parent. So they can be, too guilty and empathetic. So having this function actually helps INFJs protect themselves. And, sometimes a low attention span. If this isn't what they want to do, this isn't what they want to think about, this isn't interesting, they're going to have a very hard time maintaining a base level attention span to kind of keep up with that activity because they're just not going to care. So INFJs, their SI demon, they want to kind of destroy themselves from the world with this function. So it's kind of a weird way of saying it. I don't even think it's a correct sentence, but what it means is, the world, they feel a martyr victim complex because, their introverted sensing demon has to do with their own experience, their own, life basically. And they're so pessimistic about their own life and their own experience that they kind of collapse in on themselves and they might think, oh, the world wants to destroy me and take me out. And sometimes that can be very self-destructive. So it's very destructive as a function. So final thoughts, INFJs, they view the world in a very specific way. There's obviously much more to this than just the functions and, your nurture, your expression of these functions, how you've developed them, that is a huge part of it. But overall, there's kind of that baseline understanding of things they're more optimistic about and are going to, lead with, and things that are more secondary and pessimistic. They're optimistic with making smart choices, smart decisions. Optimistic, but pessimistic with good habits and developing habits and having to think too much about the maintenance and the status quo. But these traits, they define things like their intuition, their empathy, their strong intention, low self-esteem, self-destructive behaviors. It really goes into that struggle that a lot of INFJs can have, and it defines their character. But they can work on developing all of these for a little bit more of a balanced approach for INFJs to feel like, they have that kind of responsible, moderate approach. They can try and work on all of these functions to develop them to a more realistic state. So I hope you guys enjoyed that kind of breakdown of the INFJ's cognitive functions. If you want to see any other videos on this topic or for any other types, let me know in the comments down below. And please subscribe as well, as it helps the channel. And I hope you all have a great day.